You know, it's just,
All the pieces are there, they need to run it into the council.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure, sure. Okay.
That's a great sign. Remember when we were kids, they come out with polio.
You know what you're
Vaccine on sugar.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody in the country.
Let me give you two numbers.
Hey, we're dating ourselves.
I know we are.
2/3 of the supplicants we have on shoe
Oh,
Because I know what it's saying.
don't we wish life
A third
would be
of
so
them, the ones
simple?
who are leaking, essentially,
I won't try the sugar cake.
we need to focus on the
You know,
third.
what's to me unfortunate is how
But
we're
it's a
getting
$3
such
million nickel.
misinformation about the tax. And so we never even have
Listen,
Russian control.
Alma, I have brought this up until I'm blue in the face. It's not sexy, nobody knows how to It's just not blockchain, it's not.
That's going to slow down our ability.
We get a ton of pushback from the people who are on the septic, because I know we wanted
Oh, no,
to
they're anti-tax.
get our street off of it, our neighbors would not hear
That's
of
what
it.
I'm saying, there's
because they're
2/3 of it that
functioning and they have to
function
get on
well,
the bill.
and they don't wanna get off of it.
I know.
The bad ones are on the north side.
The green people in Washington are gonna give us some money, so we'll worry about that.
Well, that may be,
Oh dear.
well, see, I wanna bury the electrical lines.
Oh, now we're talking, yeah.
And I say that to your brother-in-law, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, ask him how he buried them on this street, though.
They paid for it. I'm sorry.
We haven't started yet.
He got me excited. It's Monday morning and I've got my coffee.
I'm ready to quickly turn into a council.
I just want to get so much done and it's hard to do. But the port's great. The port's the least of our problems.
Okay.
We plan on keeping it that way.
All right, since it's 9:15, I'd like to start the meeting. Chairman Shelton had a conflict, so he asked me to conduct this meeting. I would like to start by asking Mr. Fleming to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence for your own attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Before we begin, I would like to state that the board is meeting in person today, and we are holding this meeting following public health guidelines. To keep the board in compliance with social distancing recommendations, we have availability for other interested parties who would like to attend the meeting but may feel uncomfortable doing so in person to meet via video audio conferencing. This information is listed in the public meeting notice. Also, I would like to inform board members that the mics we are using today are push to talk, so please speak distinctly and clearly into the mic as we are recording today's meeting for later streaming. Now let's get on with the agenda. We will start with the approval of the August 3rd, 2020 Board of Directors meeting minutes. You should have all received copies in your packet. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Okay, next, are there any public comments?
Chairman, there's no public comment.
Okay, now, please, okay, there are no public comments, so now we'll move on to presentations. Beth McKay will now present milestones to Gary Pudamat and Ron Dornier.
Yes. So if we could ask Gary and Ron to step into the room, please. They're socially distancing themselves outside. Good morning, Gary. Come on in. Yep. Great. And stand right here for the moment, and then we're going to ask you to move to the back of the room for pictures. But I have the happy task this morning, first of all, good morning again. I have the happy task this morning of recognizing 2 of 4 people who have great tenure with the organization this morning. First is Gary Pudamat. Gary is Manager of Treasury and Compensation. He is celebrating 20 years with JAXPORT, and actually celebrated a couple of months ago, but because of we weren't meeting in person, it was determined we wanted to recognize you in person, so we'd hold off this recognition until today. So what does Gary do every day? He oversees the Treasury function, which includes the oversight and payments of JAXPORT bonds and bank borrowings. He is involved in monitoring the refinancing of existing and new debt issuance, and you know we've done 2 of those big reissuances over the last 2 years. In terms of day-to-day activities and the impact, he manages the payment process this year of $22 million in debt service payments, all paid as agreed, we're happy to report. He is also the administrator of JAXPORT's biweekly payroll, which means that he has managed 3,770 paychecks in a single year, and for that, all of the staff very much appreciate you. Gary is also an avid runner, among other things. His neighbors frequently see him circling the neighborhood running, and this year, Gary, his wife, and daughter all competed in the Gate River Run. So congratulations, Gary, for being here 20 years. Thank you for your great service. We appreciate you. And now, very good. And I think we have some hand sanitizer we'll now pass around, right? They're very good. Thank you. And the second milestone we're recognizing today is another important member of the finance team, and that's Ron Dornier. So Ron, step on up here. Ron is senior accountant over accounts payable and general ledger. In this role, he oversees weekly check runs. He pays JAXPORT vendors and makes sure we stay in good graces with community vendors, suppliers, and contractors. He is responsible for general ledger and month-end closeout, and he works closely with our external auditors, RSM, who were here earlier, to close out our fiscal year, and that process begins next week. Ron manages the processing of 4,350 payments this year, and that totaled more than $45 million in payments. His work is critical to the financial integrity of our organization and includes checking all vouchers for making sure they're complete, that they're being paid in the right time period, they have the appropriate authority associated with them, and they're assigned to the right general ledger account. He's a team player and most recently could be seen working with our procurement group out at Blunt Island counting inventory. He's an LSU grad. He is a surfer most mornings before dawn. You can see him if you were up that early at the beach surfing. And he is a certified health nut here at JAXPORT. So thank you, Ron, for your service to our port. We really appreciate you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Our next milestones will be presented by Fred Wong, and he's presenting to Carl Nodine and Marv Grivey.
All right, Carl, Marv, just stand right there. Right there. Good morning, everyone. All right, today we're recognizing Carl Nodine, our Crane Tech 3, for his 20 years of service here at JAXPORT. Carl is an Air Force veteran who previously served our country as a ground support tech. His mechanical knowledge makes him a valuable asset to JAXPORT's crane team. Carl is known as the project man. He has never seen a project he didn't want to work on. He uses his knowledge and expertise to help our cranes to be in tip-top shape while reducing our repair costs. Teammates describe Carl as dependable, trustworthy, and very loyal. When he first joined JAXPORT 20 years ago, he was the port's only Air Force veteran, surrounded by mostly Navy vets. So he did get a ribbing, but he takes that in good nature. When Carl's not working on cranes, you'll find him in the woods hunting, working on car projects, or riding his motorcycle. Here's a fun fact about Carl. He is a man after my own heart. He is a meat eater. And he loves meat. I love meat, so we get along together. Carl, thank you for your 20 years of service. Please step up. All right, Marv, step on up. I hope Marv's a meat eater too, so. How are you, Marv? Yeah. All right, today we're also recognizing Marv Grivey for his 10 years of dedicated service. Marv is JAXPORT's Director of Project Management. He oversees the delivery of our port's capital program, which includes all major construction projects, such as our wharf construction, sheet pile wall installation, and underdeck and pile rehab. And in addition to those highly visible projects, he also manages the not-so-fun projects, such as our berth maintenance dredging and our DMMAs, which you guys are going to hear a lot about later on today. Marv is a team player and does an outstanding job for JAXPORT, and he has been doing that for 10 years. Marv has also served in the Air Force as a Romanian linguist stationed in Fort Meade, Maryland at NSA. So just be careful, when you speak to him in Romanian. Here's another fun fact about Marv. Everyone is familiar with the former Jacksonville Landing that recently got demolished. The icon is the red top circular restaurant shopping center in downtown Jax and the waterfront. Marv was the original contractor for that building on Jacksonville Landing. In a recent consulting meeting looking over the site, he jokingly commented, "Well, I put it up and now I seen it come down full circle." Marv, thank you for your 10 years of service. Appreciate it. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, now onto the committee, the chairman's update. We're actually just going to move on to audit committee. As chair of the audit committee, I'd like to give a brief recap of our meeting. Today we met this morning to go over Eric's bonus for the 2019-2020 year. On behalf of the board, we just want to say thank you. You've done an amazing job. Great stewardship of you and your team during an unprecedentedly difficult time. So we used the SMART goals and results established last year based on the weights and the factors that we took into consideration. Your performance factor was 99 out of 100, and we approved your bonus for $88,222. You're welcome. Palmer, do you and Dan have any comments to make?
Just briefly, Eric, I think that I'd like to say that we're most impressed with the camaraderie and team spirit that remains during COVID-19, that a lot of organizations have had a real difficult time creating that goodwill that continues to build here, and so we're really proud of you and your executive team, and we thank you very much.
I think the city is fortunate to have you as the leader of JAXPORT, and I think you've done an unbelievable job in unprecedented times, so thank you very much.
So I need a motion to approve the CEO's review and evaluation.
So moved.
Any discussion? I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. Our second item of business at the audit committee meeting was to propose a slate of directors. So at our March 9th meeting, upon Mr. Baker's appointment to the JEA board, Jamie Shelton, it was determined that Jamie Shelton would serve the remainder of Mr. Baker's chairmanship term through the end of September. Since the new board officers' terms begin on October 1st, I propose that Jamie Shelton will remain as chairman, I will remain as vice chair, Palmer Clarkson will become the treasurer, and Daniel Bean secretary. Do I have a motion for this slate of officers for beginning October 5th through September 30th of 2021?
I'll make that motion.
A second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Now I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's passed. Okay, also, we needed to set the slate for the audit committee. As vice chair, I will serve as chair of the audit committee, and Palmer and Daniel Bean will be on the audit committee as well. Do I have a motion for this?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's passed. Okay, now on to new business. Beth McKeag, please present BD 2020-1001, Jacksonville Harbor Navigation Project. Beth?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I'm presenting this submission for your approval, and this has to do with the harbor deepening. The Army Corps of Engineers has determined to optimize the approach to the harbor. They would like us to have them dredge an additional 69,000 cubic yards of material. They will do this in conjunction with a larger project that's going on in that part of the ocean and harbor with the Navy, and they would like to award this contract in November. In order to do that, they need approval from the JAXPORT board to participate in this. The charge for this will be $2 million, of which FDOT will pay $1 million. And they will award the contract in November for startup in December. So we seek your approval of the material presented to you, which is to authorize disbursement of the $2 million and to approve the agreement, memorandum of agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved, I move approval of BD 2020-10-01.
A second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Yes, Mr. Salem?
Is there any reason to believe this will have any significant environmental impact on the existing project?
No, there's no reason to believe that, and we could ask the Army Corps of Engineers to document that for us if you would like, but before they do any work, they have to make sure they've cleared every environmental hurdle.
That would be my suggestion.
Very good, thank you. We'll work on that.
Yes, Eric?
If I may, through the chair to Councilman Salem, I would say there probably has been, because this project is actually one that the Corps has tagged on to the Mayport dredging project. The reason why the cost came in the way that it did so low is that there is no mobilization cost involved in this because they're currently dredging the Mayport Basin. But we will get that information for you.
Right.
Thank you. Just a lot of concern about this.
Right.
And I just want to make sure everything's on, we understand all the ramifications.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, we will now vote on BD 2020-10-01. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, James Bennett will now present us with the next 5 award submissions. James?
Thank you very much. I do have the next 5 items, so I'll be here for just a few minutes. The first one is AC 2020-09-01. A little bit of information on this. This is for the Talleyrand Marine Terminal's pile jacket repair program, and starting off with berth 4. This project consists of all materials, equipment, labor, and supervision for the pile jacket repairs to be completed at berth 4 located here at Talleyrand Marine Terminal. The scope of work includes, but is not necessarily limited to, performing repairs of existing pre-stressed concrete piles by the construction of non-structural as well as some structural pile jackets. The procurement office went out on July 26th and solicited bids from qualified and licensed contractors to provide for their aforementioned services.
We received a total of 9 bids on it. 6 was conforming, 3 was non-conforming. You can see the list there that I have presented to you. And we received those bids on September 3rd of 2020. The project actually will be funded with 75% FDOT funds and 25% JAXPORT funds. We had some funding in the current year where we performed the design and went out for these, prepared the construction plans. And so we now have funding programmed in the new fiscal year, 2021, for it. We'd originally programmed $1 million because when we first set the budget a year and a half ago, not sure exactly how much was going to be here. When we started the design, we've gone through an entire process of not only cleaning the piles, but then inspecting them to determine exactly what has to be done. And so we've received some very good bids on the overall program. So at this point, we have a contract that's presented to us for $630,298.84. So management recommends the Board of Directors approve the award of a contract to Underwater Mechanics Services, LLC, who offered the lowest responsive and responsible bid for the pilot jacket program for berth 4 in the amount of $630,298.84.
Do I have a motion to approve? A second? Is there any discussion? Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Dr.
James, I know you probably can't give me a definitive answer, but why do you think there's such a discrepancy in that bid being so low in comparison to the others? And I say that because whenever I see a particularly low bid, I'm sure I've got an ally with Ed right here, that I'm always concerned about change orders and hitting you another way. So that's my question. Thank
Well,
you.
Mr. Newman, we actually had the same concern, and as such, before we made the recommendation to move forward with this particular award, I met with the contractor themselves to make sure there was no misunderstanding on the project, misunderstanding on the scope and what was expected. As it is, this particular contractor is also the contractor that received the low bid for doing the cleaning of these piles. So this particular contractor is very familiar with this work. He's been under our berths. He was the one that did all the pile cleaning in preparation for the actual design. He's familiar with the high tides and low tide cycles that we have here, and he's got a lot of experience in this work. He's done a number of projects both up in Georgia and other ports as well, where they deal with lots of tides and heavy vessel traffic. So we were concerned to make certain that he clearly understood the project before we ever move forward. I'm confident he knows his work and can do the job well. And so that's why we made the recommendation to move forward with the award. Yes, sir.
Just a follow-up, James. Is there a bond in place?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if they do fail, we have a bond?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, we will now vote on AC 2020-09-01. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It passes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh,
I just want to make sure we was ready.
I'm sorry, I thought you would just move through them since you're up there for the next
I'm glad to do so.
Okay,
I just didn't want
moving on
to. I just didn't want to
AC
presume you was ready. So
2020.
the next one is AC.
Yeah, sorry.
And I see already I have a typo. I apologize. That's me. AC 2020-0902 on my slides. I see I have a little slight touch there. This one is for the Upland DMMA, which is Dredge Material Management Areas. So it's the Upland DMMA construction phase 1 over at Buck Island. This is a JAXPORT project that we'll move forward with under contract C-1737. On August 20th, 2020, our procurement services solicited bids from qualified and licensed contractors to provide services for Upland DMMA construction related to this phase 1 project. The key items of work to be performed under this contract includes construction of a new tow dike wall around the perimeter on the south and east sides of Cell B, and then taking material out of Cell B and placing it into this newly constructed area in order to create capacity for us to be able to put dredge material into the Cell B. The project creates needed capacity for us to continue with our berth maintenance dredging. On September 21st, our procurement services received 6 conforming bids, and you can see I have those listed here from all the contractors that did put in conforming bids. This project is funded in FY 2021, and it's funded on a 50-50 basis with FDOT and JAXPORT funds on 50-50 split. We had put $5 million in our project budget and the capital program. This bid come in slightly under $4 million at $3,987,200. So we do have remaining budget on the project as well. We are ready to move forward with the project, so management recommends the Board of Directors approve the award of a contract to Branch Diversified Incorporated, who offered the lowest responsive and responsible bid for the Upland DMMA construction Phase 1 at Buck Island in the amount of $3,987,200.
Do I have a motion to approve? A second?
Second.
Any discussion? We will now vote on AC 2020-09-02. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And
now-
we'll move on to AC 2020-09-03. And again, I copied slides, so I have a 0 missing out of that date. It's funny, you look at these things and miss some of those small ones. All right, this is the Pacico Crane Disposal at Blunt Island Marine Terminal. It's JPA contract number EQ-1739. Recently, our inspections of the crane required taking this particular crane out of service. The repairs and upgrades are unlikely to allow this crane to be placed back in service and meet certification requirements, as it has greatly exceeded its useful life. As such, the Pacico crane will be relocated back off the waterfront and demolished and disposed. The I-High crane will be repositioned from its current location east of the Hanjins to west of the Hanjins for better terminal operations, as well as the old Clyde crane, which is an old Whirly crane that's not been used on the far west end of the berth. That will be taken down and removed as well. So the scope of work includes, but it's not limited to, the relocation of the cranes as necessary, removal and disposal of the entire cranes and structures, defueling, recovery, management and proper disposal of all fuel, lubricants, and hydraulic fluids, as well as performing all the other work that's manifestly required to accomplish the relocation and disposal of the cranes. So on August 11th, our procurement services solicited bids from qualified and licensed contractors to provide the services. We received 3 conforming bids on September 8th of 2020. This particular item is a non-budgeted, non-operating item for FY 2021 and will be funded with Jacksonville Port Authority funds. Management recommends that the Board of Directors approve the issuance of a contract to Global Rigging and Transport, LLC, who offered the lowest responsive and responsible bids for the Pacico crane disposal and relocation of the I-High crane in the amount of $713,000, which includes the base bid of $560,000 and an additional $153,000 option for the owner's option number 1, which was the disposal of the Clyde crane. We first positioned this bid with a base bid for the Pacico and the I-High crane efforts. Not unsure of what the bids would come in as, but we put an option in to also get rid of the old Clyde crane at the same time, because it's the most effective while we have the contractor there with equipment to take it down now. And so with that, we'd like to go ahead and take care of all 3 cranes actions now, and so we set our wharf up for much better improved terminal operations. So with that, we recommend moving forward as shown.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second? Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Fleming?
James, did you look at selling these things at all? Did you put these up for any kind of auction?
We looked at it. The fact is the crane, this particular one, the I-High crane that we're getting rid of, the Pacico crane that we're getting rid of is one of the 3 cranes that was damaged in the microburst about 11 years ago. And we had rehabilitated this particular one when we had to dispose of the other 2. And as such, we've continued to try to keep it moving and keep it operational. At that time, it was predicted it had about 5 years of useful life. Because of our crane technicians, everybody working on it, we've got 11 years out of it. But it really has no more salvageable value as another crane to get rid of it.
How about the Clyde?
And the Clyde crane, we've done our best to try to give it away. We've tried to offer it. We've tried to give it away. We thought we had a educational institution that was going to come get it and take it. We actually had this funded 2 years ago to demolish it then. But we had a request that somebody said they wanted it and would come get it, and we've tried our best to give it to them. And we just, there's no value for it, so because of its age.
Right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
James, I have one. Do we have any plans to replace these or buy new cranes in a couple near future, couple years?
All of these cranes are at the Blunt Island Terminal, and so we are relocating the I-High. We will look at some point in the future of potentially replacing the I-High because it is a 50-gauge crane. It is an older crane, but we're also coordinating with our tenants on their needs because as SSA comes on and we got the 300-gauge cranes, they're looking at 3 additional 100-gauge cranes that they're bringing. So we are looking at it long-term as what the crane needs are, but right now this relocation of the I-High to be on the west end of the 3 Hanjins meets all of our contractual obligations and allows more efficient of our current crane operations.
Okay, we will now vote on AC 2020-09-03. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you. AC 2020-09-04 is the August Drive abutment sheet pile walls. This is JPA project number D2019-02. It's our contract C-1671. The August Drive Bridge is located on the main roadway that goes into the cruise terminal. The existing sheet pile walls for that bridge needed some repairs a couple of years ago, so we did some temporary repairs in order to patch holes in the sheet pile wall until we could do a permanent replacement. It's because the existing sheet pile walls have been deteriorating for a number of years. The temporary walls were constructed just long enough to get us to a point where we could fund this project. So the key items of work to be performed under this contract includes the complete replacement of the sheet pile walls, replacement of the bridge approach slabs, as well as the installation of the sacrificial galvanic cathodic protection system to protect the north and south abutment sheet pile walls. Procurement went out on August 7th of 2020 and solicited bids from qualified licensed contractors. On September 20th, we received 4 conforming bids. It was Poseidon Dredge and Marine, Brothers Construction, Superior Construction, as well as J.D. Henson and Company. This project is budgeted in our capital budget for 2021. It is funded 50-50 basis with FDOT and JAXPORT. We had originally put $3.4 million in the project budget when we were preparing the capital budget because of concerns with the sheet pile walls themselves and how thick they needed to be, as well as the type of tiebacks. As we got into final design with the final geotech information, we were able to put in some sheet piles that weren't quite as thick, as well as different type of tiebacks. So our budget actually come in with a proposed construction project estimate of $2.4 million. The actual bids come in at $2,276,305. So we do have remaining budget in this particular capital item. So management recommends the Board of Directors approve the award of a contract to Poseidon Dredge and Marine Incorporated, who offered the lowest responsive and responsible bid for the August Drive abutment sheet pile walls in the amount of $2,276,305.
Do I have a motion to approve? A second? Is there any discussion? Okay, we will now vote on AC 2020-09-04. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is approved.
Thank you. The last item I have is AC 2020-0909. This is the milling and asphalt maintenance and repair services for the Jacksonville Port Authority. It covers a number of different projects, both not only capital projects, but also a number of our operating type projects for repairs and maintenance. This contract includes all supervision, labor, materials, and equipment to complete the milling and resurfacing repairs on an as-needed basis at Talleyrand, Blunt Island, Dames Point terminals, the Security Operations Center, as well as PCOB, here our main building here. The scope of work includes the supply, delivery, and installation of asphalt and different thicknesses, anywhere from 1 inch up to 7 inches of thickness of type 1 asphalt. It includes all the compaction, minor repairs for potholes, repairs to asphalt around storm drains, railroad crossings, and all the work is to be performed on an as-needed basis, and typically it's based on per square yardage or by tonnage, depends on the particular item that we identified in the contract. On July 2nd, Procurement Services solicited bids from qualified and licensed contractors to provide these services. On July 27th, we received 1 conforming bid from Pars Construction Services and 1 non-conforming bid from SJD Consultants. The contract is an initial term of 1 year with 4 one-year renewal options made at the sole discretion of JAXPORT. This project is funded in our capital budget as well as in operating funds for FY 2021 and will be funded with FDOT funds and JPA funds. Management recommends the Board of Directors approve the award of a contract to Pars Construction Services, LLC, for milling and asphalt maintenance repair for Jacksonville Port Authority, who offer the responsible, and acceptable bid for an annual amount in the contract of $700,000 with 100% Jacksonville Small Emerging Business Goal.
Do I have a motion to approve? A second? Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Mr. Fleming?
I'm surprised there are only 2 bidders, and one of them was non-conforming. All the asphalt companies in town, there's 2 people?
That is correct. Most of this work is very small projects. There's none of them really big projects, so it's a lot of small areas. It may be fixing potholes, fixing around the storm drain. It may be just resurfacing a small area. So these are really not geared up to be for big asphalt
Big people
companies.
do
It's
roads
usually,
and stuff like that,
that's
yeah.
right. This is usually a lot of small areas when we need some maintenance and some bad locations.
Was it an incumbent that won it, or?
It was.
Yeah.
And he's performed work for us for previously, and he always does a good job with us, especially on these smaller projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we will now vote on AC 2020-09-09. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's
Thank you very much.
approved.
My entire team is happy now that we can proceed with projects.
Okay, now on to the CEO update. Eric?
Yes.
Okay.
But I did, regarding the question that Councilman Salem asked, I did talk with the Army Corps of Engineers, and I can confirm to you that, as Eric said, the channel extension is a part of a much larger project at Mayport. The larger project has been through all the processes, and that contract will be awarded in November. This channel extension is an option. The NEPA process is underway right now, and the contract for the notice to proceed for the option would not be issued until our money is sent, the board has approved the agreement, and the NEPA process is complete. So it will be complete before any contract is extended. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Beth. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Salem, you had stepped out, but Beth has gotten confirmation from the Army Corps of Engineers that all environmental studies and issues have been resolved, with the exception of the NEPA process. And once the NEPA process is complete, then they will start the project.
Okay.
But it's part of the bigger project, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Madam Chair, through the chair, to the board, first I want to thank the board for the kind words and the actions that you took on my evaluation. I'm very humbled by it. But I would be remiss if I did not mention the team that we have in place. You know, oftentimes I'm asked about my proudest moment here at the port, and I have to say it's the selection of the team that we have. We're very blessed to have them as team members. They are very diligent in their work. They work very hard. They're very responsive and responsible, not only to the community, but to our employees here, as well as City Hall and the state and the federal government. The things that we do and what we undertake, we would not be as successful as we are without our team in place. And I am so proud and so happy to have them not behind me, but on the side of me as we go through this journey and trying to make this port one of the best ports on the East Coast. So a lot of the thanks and all of the nice words. I want to say to our team, thank you for everything that you've done, and that's management as well as the line workers, the people out there on the docks. So thank you very much, board and Madam Chair. You know, the pandemic took a big hit on a lot of ports, East and West Coast. We probably operated at a very, very high level as far as performance is concerned. I would say probably in the top 5%. A lot of that has to do with our diversification of our cargo, as well as our expense control. One of the things that we wanted to take a good hard look at was our expense control once the pandemic came, when we felt the pressure of the pandemic. Management as well as employees, their continued oversight and operational awareness, you know, with the minimizing of our work crews, our staggered muster times, and the consistent sanitizing on a daily basis of our facilities as well as our individuals kept us out of a lot of trouble of shutting down terminals or even experiencing a lot of the hiccups and bumps that other ports actually experienced. So they did a very good job. You know, also the creativity in the way we captured revenue. My hat go off to Fred and his team on the labor cruise vessels that we were able to actually see come here at JAXPORT. That helped us with our revenue as well as the uptick in military cargo. So that was a fantastic job when other people were actually experiencing a lot of stress. The team was experiencing that stress, but they were working very, very diligently in doing so. Harbor Deeping. I am pleased to announce that contract A and B is complete. As you all know, contract C, an award has been issued to Great Lakes Dredge Company. The anticipated start date of contract C will occur December of this year, with a anticipated completion date of 2020. And right now it's fall of 2020. I'm hopeful that it may be sooner than fall of 2020. And the total cost of that project, of the entire project, A through C, is $407 million, which is a lot shy of the 484 when we got started. I'm hoping that contract C does not see any hiccups or any issues, and we can keep it at the $116 million construction cost as we move forward. Capital projects. You heard Mr. Bennett give a presentation of several capital projects. We had a very heavy agenda as it pertained to capital projects. I want the board to be assured that we did not cannibalize during the pandemic any capital projects that would have had an impact on our revenues. We were very methodical about those capital projects that we put on the back burner. We Gantt charted it out for the timelines and the time frame in which we can start those projects, and certainly consulted with our financial team to make sure that everything was in order to do so. Now that we begin to see a slight uptick in our revenues coming back as well as our volume of cargo coming back, we can start releasing some of those capital projects as we move forward. So well done, James, and your team, as you managed through that. I know it was kind of tough when I put the brakes on, but we managed through it, and we saw the light. Pleased to announce that the whole Zineman vessel has departed the port. Very minimal impact to our berths. I think within a week's time frame, we were back berthing our ro-ro ships at that berth. There again, you know, it was we suffered very minimal damage and was blessed and also made some revenue off the time that it was here. Moody's. Moody's, the rating agency, has reaffirmed our A2 bond rating. I think that's amazing in the industry that we're in. Our sister agencies or our sister ports to the south of us is suffering dearly. Canal and Port Everglades and Miami, you know, they're heavily laden with cruise, and we have some more northern ports that are not doing as well beyond South Carolina. But we seem to have managed through, and our rating showed that. RSM will start their 2020 external audit process next week. We're looking forward to that. Mike Lafong is handling their entry here into the port. They'll be segregated from the team, obviously, as they walk through and work through their external audit, but Mike and his team will be there to help. Mike and his team will be there to help accommodate any needs that they may have. JAXPORT was named one of the healthiest workplaces in Jacksonville. Last year, 78% of our employees participated in a wellness program initiative. That's pretty impressive when you talk about participants and the dedication of the workforce. You all know in your jobs and the companies that you run, it's very important to have a very healthy workplace, you make sure that your employees are healthy. I want to give a special thanks to the Wellness Committee Chair, Ms. Retta Rogers, as well as committee members Angel Muse, Bradley Birch, Brandon Norman, Dan Deptula, Mackenzie Hill, Renisha Jones, Rodney Love, and Susan Stewart, as well as our previous chair, Chris Crouch. Want to thank all of them for making JAXPORT an outstanding, healthy workplace. Last month, JAXPORT was presented the Economic Impact Award by First Coast Manufacturers Association. One of the key factors in JAXPORT receiving the award was the increase in port-related jobs in Northeast Florida. Again, great job, team. Madam Chair, if there aren't any questions, that concludes mine.
Does anybody have any questions for Eric?
I have one
Okay.
comment.
Okay.
Eric, I think it's great that you didn't postpone any capital projects, but I hope it's also true we don't postpone any safety projects. We want to keep maintaining our real great safety record. That's super important, and both for our employees and for our reputation.
Madam Chair, to Mr. Palmer, they both go hand in hand as we see it. We have a robust safety program. We are continuing to get better. As a matter of fact, next month we'll give you an update as it pertains to our safety program. We realize that's part of the lifeline too, and if we start taking hits there, it costs us in other places. So point well taken.
Any other? Go ahead, Dr. Newman.
Yeah, did we ever get an update as to how those firefighters who were hospitalized made out from the fire?
Yes, sir. So the latest that we have is they're all healing quite well. The ones that had the extremity issues with the hands, they're still going through their healing process. But I want to say, as of today, I believe about 5 of them are back out of the 9, 100%. And I think there are some personal issues that's going on between Hogue and the firefighters, as you probably read.
Okay.
Going back to an earlier conversation, I think it's really important that we recognize, again, the great job you've done with this staff. I mean, it is a team effort for all that's been done, but without leadership, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you for the work you've done. And I think it's reflected, as I mentioned earlier when we had our interview briefing, that to be able in this season to not have to furlough anyone is miraculous. And that's leadership. And so thank you to you and your team for doing such a great job.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. You know, the interesting thing about our management team, I think we're all students of this. So we're studying every day, we're looking at best practices, we're running all types of litmus tests as we go through this, and we're going through it together. We don't make decisions in silence. You know, even the decisions that I make, you know, we double and triple check simply because you don't want to get caught up in your own hype of what's going on. And I always challenge our team that if you see the wall there, don't let me run into the wall, right? And they've done a good job at that. There is no one shy on this team of walking upstairs and challenging a decision, but the challenge is respectful and it's warranted, and wanted. So we have a really, really good team. And just a little known fact on Fred, he talk about he's a meat eater. Fred eats everything. Yeah, everything. I mean, and it's not just one serving, it can be 2 or 3 servings. So when we travel, if you don't want it, just give it to Fred. He'll take care of it for you.
Let me say this, and I'll be done.
Okay.
That I appreciate the comments, but I think the other thing that's important here, and you said it when you said they come there and say whatever you want to say here, that successful businesses are successful because not so much the skill set, which is important, but the emotional maturity, and the emotional IQ of the leadership. So that says a lot about you. So thank you that you have that kind of relationship with staff.
Yeah, it is. We joke, and it's nothing for Beth to blurt out whatever Beth want to blurt out. So and Mike, I know before in the past, you all that have some tenure on the board had not seen a lot of Mike McClung, but Mike is a huge part of what happens. He is the resident CPA. When I took over this role, I kind of met with some of the top level folks and said, what is it that you're doing or you're not doing that you want to do, right? And one of the things that Mike made clear, he said, I would like to interface more with the board, and I think he should do that. And Mike, he speaks truly from a place of ensuring that we don't get ourselves in trouble when it comes to the finances and the CPA type issues that we go through. So Mike, thank you for that. And so it's been, but we're having fun. Let me say that. I think when we stop having fun, people will start checking out. But right now, we're still having fun, and I think they still like me. So, in spite of some of the days that we have.
Okay. Any more questions or comments? Okay, next up on the reports, James Bennett will start us out with engineering and construction update.
Thank you, ma'am. New pictures, absolutely. You know good well I'm going to have you new pictures each time. I only have one project to report on this time, but because of that lengthy list that we just went through, over the next couple months I'll be adding an update on the sheet pile walls, on the DMMA construction, as well as the pile jacket. So you'll start seeing more of in this section, less in the first section in upcoming months as those projects gets kicked off. Of course, this is our major reconstruction project here, which was a $51 million construction project for the berth reconstruction of 33 and 34. And this is phase 2, right? Phase 1 was the first 1,400 foot. This is phase 2. And we're in the first half of phase 2, which is 2A, right? So phase 2A is actually scheduled to be completed in early December. We're so glad to have this one almost done. What you see here is a picture of over several different months here. You can see June 20th, and if you notice in the top right, you can see a lot of open spaces. That's where we poured the pile, the pile caps. You can see in the far left, the west end, we're just now starting to put rebar up for the deck. When you go to the next slide, you can see we closed, nope, hold, back up. On the second picture, you can see we've closed up some more of that openings. We've set more deck panels. We've started pouring deck at the far left, and rebar is going on in the middle. Now, this week, you can see we've closed up the entire deck. We put in the final bit of rebar. We've got half the berth, 2/3 of the berth poured. And on the far left, we're starting to put in the jewelry. Okay, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. So when you look at it from the top again, all the work really is focused predominantly on the right side, which is the east end of the deck. On the left, you see all that construction work going in. But what you can also see here in this particular photo is the waterside crane rail beam is on the far left, obviously against the water. But you can also see the 50 gauge crane rail beam, and now to the far right, very, very clearly defined 100 gauge crane rail for the 100 gauge ZPMs. But what's important is all of those little yellow tractors on the far right. As they're coming in, compacting, putting all the backfill in, getting ready to start bringing up asphalt and concrete for that last section of the actual surface now. When you look at it from different perspectives, again, you can start to see some different things. You notice there's some squares along that section from the 100-gauge crane rail back land side. Those are everything from utility vaults, large boxes underground, to water, storm water structures that now you don't really see. If you remember, there's a huge coffer dam over in front of where those barges are. That's all closed, it's all underground. You don't see any of that. So when you drive by on the surface, you never realize what all is underneath the ground. Again, now here, if you notice, this is the west end of Phase 2A, and you see we've got some final concrete slab decks that are there. But if you notice, we're starting to add color. See the little yellow dots along the waterfront as well as the black? That's the jewelry. We are now starting to put on the bollards as well as the fenders. So those things are now starting to come to place as we continue to progress back to the east to finish up this phase of construction. This just kind of jumps back a little bit. You can see, again, there was pouring concrete. One of the pours here where it's pouring 74 foot of concrete, having to make it all the way across those crane rail beams to get the concrete pumped in. But the photo on the right was actually where they were setting some of the very last deck panels. So we got a photo of those last panels going into that Phase 2A. So again, we continue to make progress. The project does remain on budget. We are behind schedule as we had originally intended, as I've mentioned before. Contractor's doing really good work for us. It's just taking him longer for his production. But we expect to have this first phase completed and turned over to the contractor early December. So now that first 700 feet of berth will actually go into production and go into use while we finish the next section. We're now meeting with the contractor to finalize his maintenance of traffic plan for this Phase 2B and working with our tenants adjacent to it to make sure that they remain operational, fully operational, getting in and out of their gates with this, because the contractor can modify the maintenance of traffic plan from the original plans, but we've got to make sure it doesn't have any negative impacts on our tenants. So we're preparing to get ready to start that phase. I've got some internal meetings scheduled this week to continue that coordination and dialogue. And with that, I'm glad to take any questions.
Okay, Mr.
There will be some maintenance dredging because we haven't been there, but we will do that. It will not be Manson Construction. It is Manson Construction, but a different division. But yes, sir, just before we put it in production, we will come through as expected and do some maintenance dredging there, bring it back to depth.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. CFO Beth McKeag has provided us with financial highlights as info only in our board packet. So let's move on to Mike McClung, who will provide us with the financials and vital statistics. Mike.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Presenting financials through August 31st, 11 months into the year. We're looking at revenues at about 59 million, almost 60 million through 11 months. Total revenues all in about a $4.4 million shortfall to budget. That's a 7% decline from our budget expectations and a year ago. Still some numbers that we're real proud of given the challenge we've had this year. So we're targeting about a 64.5, maybe a $65 million a year against a 70 million budget all in for the full fiscal year. We'll have those numbers hopefully within a week or so. Highlighting autos this month, just talking about things rebounding some. We saw some real strong numbers in our auto business this month, making budget, as you can see there, and the units tracked just slightly under our 50,000 units for the budget for the month of August. So just some strong auto numbers. We think that'll sustain into September. Containers, also the Puerto Rico business is solid. The Asian business has actually rebounded some. I'll let Robert talk to the future of those cargoes and see if they'll continue. It's been, from a financial perspective, we've been watching this month to month, but some positive trends certainly coming into year end, so we'll take that. Looking at the expense side of the ledger, we can see savings, cost containment that kicked in around March or April. Just an amazing job across the board, saving $5.1 million to budget outpacing our revenue shortfall. Just, again, every line item there you see has brackets around it, showing a Herculean cost-saving effort in the year FY20. Operating income before debt service and depreciation, positive as a result of the cost savings efforts and solid revenues. And then with some non-operating items, we have some savings in our debt service relative to a 2012 bonds that was refinanced for the 2020 bonds. All in about a $2.1 million income before depreciation, exceeding our budget expectations of again, $2.1 million. That is going to be utilized to pay down our line of credit and to fund James' robust FY21 capital budget. So, you're welcome. Next slide, please. Looking at the key vital stats, we're seeing revenue again about 7% shortfall over prior year. Focusing on the prior year here as well as budget. Breaking it down by autos and containers. Container TEUs down 7% year over year. We're expecting total container TEUs to be in the 1,250,000 range for the year. Autos, about a 23% decline. If you recall, the months of April, May, and June, the auto volumes really dried up significantly. So a strong finish, we think we'll be approaching 540,000 units, possibly for the full year, which will be a pretty good year all in. Lastly, looking at the balance sheet, Julio, thank you. As mentioned, we have some strong cash balances as a result of our operating income and after all non-operating items. We're going to be, with the $18.9 million is a little bit stronger cash balances than we need to maintain. We'll take those monies and pay down our line of credit in the month of September, which has already occurred. Also highlighting, if you look at our restricted cash for capital projects, you see we have $85 million on hand. That is just teeing up the funding for the harbor deepening contract C payment that went out in early September. So we just had everything positioned, ready to go. So we'll see those balances normalize when we look at the September financial statements. We also like to notate that the line of credit at $19.5 million is all spoken for, with funding forthcoming from primarily the grants receivable there. That's an FDOT grant. We'll be receiving that over the next 9 quarters. That's all about Berth 3334 and how that's being funded to the tune of 75-25. So the line of credit is being used to fund that deferred grant reimbursement agreement. So all in all, a pretty strong balance sheet as well coming into year end. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Robert Peak will now present us with the commercial highlights. Robert?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
So we have a lot going on in marketing and sales, and I'll give you a brief update on our work, and then I'll talk to you about some new business that we have or that we're chasing. So we'll start with most of our in-person meetings. We're not able to do those because of COVID. We've moved to a lot of video conferencing and remote events. And I wanted to share two, one that we've just done and one that we're about to do. So the one that we just finished was we partnered with an organization here called TALON, which is the Transportation and Logistics Organization Network. And it's a collection of 6 local transportation and logistics organizations, including the JAX Chamber Transportation and Logistics Council and the Propeller Club, local Propeller Club, and 4 other organizations. And we put on a webinar through Zoom on September 18th, and we participated with JAX USA partnership with Aaron Bowman, really targeting a lot of local shippers and the local shipping community to kind of educate them about what's going on at the port and talk a lot about e-commerce. And e-commerce has really become the big buzzword over the last 6 months. A lot of retailers are announcing really record sales in e-commerce and really trying to leverage that. So we did that in September, and then coming up in October, we are going to host JAXPORT's first ever webinar. And we're going to do that through a GoToMeeting platform, a GoToSeminar platform. It's going to focus on e-commerce. We also are doing that with JAX USA partnership. Andre Wallace is going to join us on that, as well as a commercial real estate broker. And that is going to be really targeted nationally to the industrial real estate community, as well as shippers and beneficial cargo owners, to really kind of lay out for them why Jacksonville and JAXPORT is a great value for them in terms of moving their e-commerce cargoes through JAXPORT. So while we've had some challenges in terms of meeting with customers in person because of COVID, we really are trying to be creative and flexible in how we do that, and we're increasingly turning to video conferencing and things like webinars in order to do that. Okay, separately, our marketing department also coordinated a customer and leadership satisfaction survey for us this year. And we surveyed two major groups, and that was JAXPORT tenants, who we have contractual relationships with on the terminal, and then our non-tenants, who are port users. So these would be the ocean carriers, the shipping lines, the trucking companies, freight forwarders, those who use the port but don't have a contractual relationship. And we measured several factors, and I want to highlight two of them. So first, we asked customers to answer their level of agreement to this question: I have confidence in JAXPORT's leadership. And we were pleased to see the results. And so our tenants, 88% of our tenants agreed. They either agreed or strongly agreed with that statement, that they have confidence in JAXPORT's leadership. That's 8 percentage points better than what we did when we surveyed in 2018. Our non-tenants reported 82% agreement, which was an improvement from 2018. And then we kind of aggregated those because we survey a lot more non-tenants than tenants, just because of the sheer size of the sheer number of people using the port, and came to an 84% total agreement, which was 5 percentage points better than 2018. So we were really pleased to see the improvement, see that we were over the 80% mark. A lot of that credit goes to Eric Green and his senior leadership team for their willingness to get in front of customers and talk to them, listen to them. We really think that customer service is a big selling point of ours, and we use it as one of our value propositions relative to some other ports when we're selling our business. So we are pleased to see those results. In terms of, we also measure something called our Net Promoter Score. For those of you not familiar with it, Net Promoter Score it measures how customers perceive a company. And they basically give you a measure on a scale of 0 to 10, each customer. And it's based on one question. And the question is, how likely are you to recommend our organization to a colleague? And basically, those who answer low on that scale are subtracted from those who answer high, and you come up with one company score on a scale of -100 to +100. So by industry, there's not really one universal NPS average for every industry, because every survey can be a little bit different in terms of the audience they survey. But I wanted to give you an example of an NPS survey across industries. This was done by a company called Satmetrics, which actually is a co-founder of the NPS score. And you can see that at the top of this survey, tablet computer companies scored an average of 56. They had the highest average. If you go down to the bottom, cable, TV, and internet service providers are at the bottom. I've looked at a number of NPS surveys, and the middle always changes, but the cable, satellite, internet service providers are always at the bottom. They're always around -1. So if you're a tablet computer company and you scored a 57, you're slightly above average. But if you're an internet service provider, you just have to get to 0 and you're above average. So a separate survey showed logistics and transportation, showed an NPS average of 29. Now, that was not part of this survey, so it might not be an exact apples-to-apples comparison, but I want to give you a sense of a range. So JAXPORT's NPS survey results for 2020 was a 45 total. Our tenants gave us a 55. Our non-tenants gave us a 42. Again, we aggregate the total number of respondents. It came to a 45. It was 7 points better than the first time we did the survey, which is 2018. So our the survey results, the open-ended survey results also taught us something, and that is the more customers do business with us, the higher they tended to rate us. So the more interaction they had with us, the closer they were to us, the higher they rated us. The companies that are more distant from us, don't know us quite as well, didn't rate us quite as well. So we've really learned that the more people do business with us and get to know us, the more that the higher they're going to score for us. So we're taking that to heart and really leaning into reaching out to as many customers as possible. Our intent is to resurvey every 2 years. Our aim is to increase our Net Promoter Score each time out. We'll see over time if we're improving, and we will benchmark against others in our industry, including other ports. So this will be a new permanent measure for us moving forward. And I want to thank our marketing team really for really doing the yeoman's work on both the survey and also on these webinars. So on the container side, on the sales side, I want to jump into kind of segueing what Mike was talking about. So industry trends are fairly well playing out the way we thought they would earlier this year. So this slide, what it's showing you is for each month this year, our TEU totals, and then the month-over-month change compared to 2019. And as Mike showed you, that in the spring we saw this dramatic drop-off in our container volumes. Fairly much every container port in the United States saw a similar drop-off. And you might recall in the spring I showed you the charts that showed you all the other container ports, and they were dropping off. And we said at the time that our projection was that sometime around September we thought these volumes would rebound. And we are indeed starting to see that rebound. So if you go back to February and March, you'll recall that this is when Asia production shut down. First, it was due to the Lunar New Year. That transitioned right into the COVID problem in Asia. So all the Asian manufacturing shut down. As soon as the Asian manufacturing returned, the economy started to shut down, really shut down in earnest. And that's where you see those volumes dropping off in March, April, and May. And then Asian manufacturing returned and the U.S. economy started to reopen. We started to see more of a rebound. To a point where in July, we actually did 1% more containers this July than we did last July. And we were very happy to see that because last fiscal year, we set a record in the total number of TEUs that we've ever handled, and July was part of that. So for us to eclipse that indicated that we had a real shot in the arm in July. Even August, we were 2% down from what we were in August 2019, but we still had a very strong August. In fact, if we handled as many containers every month as we did this August, we would set a new fiscal year record in container handling for the port. So despite being down 2%, we still thought we had a fairly strong fall. As Mike mentioned, we do think volumes have been steady in September. We don't have the exact numbers yet, but just the information we have now, we feel very confident about September, and we feel equally confident about October as well, that those volumes are going to hold quite well for us. It's possible that those volumes will hold well all the way through the end of the calendar year. But once we get through October, that's when there's just a lot of uncertainty. There's the election coming up in November. Every 4 years we go through this. Doesn't matter what the political parties are, who the candidates are. There's uncertainty in the late fall leading up to the election. There's a question if there's going to be more stimulus money. There's a question if there's going to be stimulus money for Puerto Rico. There's a question, too, if as the economies reopen, will people begin to shift their spending more to experiences like eating out and taking vacations versus buying material goods, which is what they've been doing the last few months. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the industry past December, but the feeling is the next few months things are going to be strong. There are a couple of wrinkles that we think are probably moderating the full recovery. One is that volumes are dependent upon the economy. And we know that we're still ramping up in terms of getting the economy fully back to speed. There have been at least 40 major retailer bankruptcies this year, among them Pier 1 Imports, Neiman Marcus, JCPenney, J.Crew, Brooks Brothers, the parent company of Ann Taylor, and all of you know that in August, Steinmart declared bankruptcy and said they would shut all of their stores. So the significance of this, that these major retailers who are major shippers, it's not just that their volumes are not coming into our port or U.S. ports, but it represents a significant shuttering of brick and mortar stores. And if that continues to happen, then we're going to see a further rise in e-commerce, which is exactly what we think is going to happen. I saw one statistic that said that by 2025, the thinking is that 45 cents of every dollar spent in the U.S. will be spent online for retail goods. So it is something that we're tracking and we're really baking into our entire sales process. The other factor that is playing into this a little bit is the demand for space on the vessels is outpacing the capacity that exists on the vessels. So what has happened is that earlier this year, as you recall, as that demand fell off, ocean carriers began to blank, or that is cancel their sailings into the U.S. As demand has returned, the carriers are not adding that capacity or those sailings back as quickly to meet the demand. And what that has done is it's kept rates, ocean carrier rates, high, which is good for the ocean carriers. They're actually making money. The shippers, though, are paying, in some cases, record rates, and they're having some trouble getting space on board the ships. And if that continues, then what that will do is depress the total amount of containers that otherwise could come into U.S. ports. So this is something that we think is probably a near-term issue as the carriers manage their capacity, but it's something that's affecting volumes probably right now. Again, the word that we're using internally for the next couple of months is steady when it comes to container volumes. Okay, if we go to the vehicle side, we actually see a lot of parallels between what's happening on the vehicle side with what we see what's happening on the container side. So just like other manufactured product, you go back to the spring, if you recall, auto manufacturing pretty much shut down in North America, U.S., Mexico, shut down in Asia and Europe. Factories just shuttered because of COVID. The supply dropped significantly, and that's what you see in those volumes April, May, and June. It really was a supply issue. Those factories just were not producing. Their suppliers who provide the parts, a lot of them also shut down as well. And then you can see production actually returned to those auto plants, and then you can see that units started to rebound to the point that in August, we handled 2% more vehicles this August than we did in August of 2019. And again, that's comparing against a fiscal year that was a record number of automobiles for us last year. So we don't have numbers yet for September, but just like on the container side, based upon the customers with whom we speak, the analysts that we listen to, we believe that at a minimum, September and October are going to be fairly good months for us. Past that, again, we have some of those same critical factors that cause some uncertainty, but what we do think is that demand has not really fallen off. We think that those volumes, depression was really a supply issue, not so much a demand issue. And as those factories get back to full production and as those suppliers can supply them more fully, that those volumes return to really more true levels. A couple of notes about the auto industry. So J.D. Power said that in August, their estimate was that the total number of U.S. units, new vehicle units sold in the United States was about 3.7% less than what they sold in August 2019. So not too far off from normal. Okay, so we do recognize that our container units and our vehicle units, they're down year over year. But given the context, we think that we're actually, as Mike mentioned, we think we're kind of coming on strong at the end of the year. Okay, so that's some context. I'll share now some business opportunities we're working on. These are all in progress. As they often are, these are a little bit sensitive, so I'm going to speak kind of generally to them, but I wanted to give you an idea of what we're working on. So Project Jump, this is an opportunity for us to increase our containerized rail volumes through the port. And we're working directly with our customer to try to create an inland transportation option that hinges on rail. They already have the ocean carrier side locked down, they're good with. We just have to create the efficiency on the rail side. And if we're able to do that with them, then we would generate $600,000 in new revenue starting this fiscal year. So that is underway right now, and we'll know soon how that plays out. Project Cardinal Song is a customer who is shifting several thousand containers a year from other ports to JAXPORT. And again, rail will play a part in this shift. This would be about $300,000 a year. This would not start until probably earlier mid-2021. Some of these projects do have kind of long lead times. But this is another case of an example where we're able to provide a value proposition and an efficiency that other ports cannot. So we are confident we can see those volumes. Project Pile is a break bulk project, and this is to import over 1,800 metric tons of concrete pilings for a Florida construction project. I mention this one because it is a non-containerized project. We talk a lot about our diversification. Our focus is heavy on containers and automobiles, but break bulk is an important piece of that, and this would be a good example of this. This would give us about $107,000 in new revenue to lock down these concrete pilings. Project Renew, this is a solar power project. I mention solar power just about every month. We handle a lot of solar panels because a lot of this construction is going on right in our backyard. This would be a sizable number of solar panels, and it would generate $45,000 a year in new revenue for us. And Project Goose is a large retailer. They're looking to import new volumes, largely for Asia. A lot of it's e-commerce. We're competing with other South Atlantic ports for those volumes, but it would be about $42,000 a year in new business for us. So those are just examples of some of the projects that we're pursuing. And these are some highlights of business. We've locked all these down about in the last 30 days. So Project Touch is interesting because it's a Japanese company. They're importing wood pulp from Europe into the United States. And they've chosen JAXPORT in which to move those volumes. And it'll generate about $100,000 a year for us. I mentioned before, forest products and wood pulp is a big strength of ours, and this is another company that's using JAXPORT to import those volumes. Project Azalea, this is a large retailer. We've been asked, again, not to name them for competitive purposes, but they are a very large international brand. They are engaged in e-commerce, mostly for residential customers. They've been shipping product through U.S. West Coast ports as well as U.S. East Coast ports. They're looking to shift these volumes, or they are shifting these volumes from the West Coast to Jacksonville. And they're going to import about 2,000 TEUs a year to start for us, and this will generate about $54,000 in new revenue. The furniture opportunities, we have two that we've closed out. One is Article. You might know the Canadian furniture retailer Article. They opened a distribution center here a couple of years ago. They do all their business online. Since they've opened here, they've grown considerably, and their online presence has grown considerably. They're adding new business to us, and there's a second retailer who also is going to add some furniture business to us, and they'll combine for about $40,000 in new business. And then Project Gantry, it's another large retailer. They're engaged in e-commerce. This is consumer-based. They've seen their business grow over the last 6 months. This will be about another 1,000 new TEUs that we haven't previously handled. It would, and these are volumes that are destined for a Florida distribution center. This will be about $37,000 for us. So those are just some highlights of business that we're chasing and new business that we've locked down. We know that COVID has thrown us some challenges, but we feel like we found our footing, and we feel very confident about things moving forward. So that's my commercial report. I'll be glad to answer any questions for you. No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have added a new addition to our C-suite level positions, Mr. Nicholas Primrose. Nick is sort of a, we'll call him a hybrid of what we used to have with Gil. Nick come to us from Governor DeSantis's team as one of his deputy general counsels. Nick does not carry the title as our legal counsel because we have an agreement with OGC. Mr. Meggett does that for us and will attend the board meetings. However, there are some things in which has become very evident that the port need to really look at and be engaged in. One is resiliency as we move forward into the future. That is the new buzzword. Nick comes to us with a wealth of knowledge and background in dealing with FEMA and FEMA claims with a lot of the dredge issues that we're having, and so he'll be dealing with that as well as heading up our risk management department for us. So as well as environmental. So Nick is, we're happy to have Nick. He's already made an impression and an impact. He worked closely with OGC on our contract. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Nicholas Primrose.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Okay, now if there's no other business, the meeting is adjourned.